Hello, welcome to Shad Life. I just want to talk a little bit about who I am, where I come from, and why I'm even bothering doing this YouTube channel. Um, the reason why is I've been seeing a lot of channels and stuff, people kind of giving up or deciding they don't want to do YouTube anymore, or people going through other struggles. And then also in the bike industry, you know, well-known riders or pro riders are losing sponsorships. We're kind of in trying times right now. Um, and so uh, I just want to talk a little bit about my background, where I come from, and why I decided to do a YouTube channel and why I continue to do a YouTube channel. Um, so, and of course, I'm not going to give you my life story, right? I'm just going to talk more about my biking experience, since that's the majority of stuff on my channel. I have talked about my sobriety in a few videos, and yeah, I'm at 8.5 years now, so that's pretty awesome. Um, and that's been great. Like, that's been a game changer for me, and has I was never like a super gnarly drunk that would drink and you know be passing out on the curb or whatever, right? Like I was always like what you would call, like, I used to call myself a functional alcoholic, and people actually use that term. Like, yeah, I drank like every day, and a few beers to take the edge off. You hear all that, right? And people that are like that tend to not think they have a drinking problem, but a little bit of a research into what I was doing, and health wise and mental wise or whatever, it was definitely a problem for me. So I decided to quit. So there's that. That's my sobriety in a nutshell, right? Okay, so now that I got that out of the way, that's more of kind of my personal life, right? Which I'm willing to share on YouTube. And I share it on YouTube because other people out there like you might have that same struggle, and hopefully I can give you some incentive to quit or significantly reduce or whatever it takes, right, to improve your life and your health, because drinking a lot, like every day, even if it's just a couple of years, is not healthy. It just absolutely is not. All right, so I got into biking. I mean, I started riding a bicycle when I was around 6. 5, 6. I mean, when I was younger than that, I had a big wheel. I loved that big wheel. I talked a little bit about my big wheel story. And I rode a bike, and it was basically freedom when you're that young. And it was in the 70s, of course. And, you know, parents weren't so crazy about keeping an eye on their kids, so we pretty much roamed all over the place on our bikes, my friends and I. But and if you see Stranger Things, it was kind of like that. We'd go on adventures and things like that, right? So yeah, that was kind of where I was pretty obsessed with biking. Like, biking was going to be a part of my life no matter what at that point, because it was just a way to get around and be free and whatever. A lot of kids, they think, oh, when I'm 16 and I get a car and I get my license, that's freedom. To me, that wasn't freedom. The bicycle was freedom to me, right? So, yeah. But come around like 78, 79, I was in like 5th and 6th grade. I saw like some kids in my neighborhood on BMX bikes, but I was kind of in a, lower income neighborhood in Minneapolis, so it was like those kids were on like Team Murray's or Huffy's or whatever, but they had the bars with crossbars, and I was just like, oh, what is that? Like, these are cool. And I had a Schwinn Stingray with the high-rise bars on it, and I saw these kids jumping at a little jump, and I tried some jumping. But then one day I was in this park, and I found this bike lane there, and it was actually a Huffy monoshock, and the sprocket was bent, right? And I was like, it was just abandoned there. So I brought it, or I told my dad about it, so he came over there with me. We brought it home, and he said, here's the deal. I'll put it out, lock it to the fence out on the road, and put a sign on it and see if anybody claims it and if it was theirs. And he goes, if their week goes by and nobody claims it, then I can have it, right? And I think he also called the police, and they didn't know anything about a stolen bike. So a week went by, and nobody claimed it. So he said, I can have it. And the first thing I did was basically took a crescent or adjustable wrench like this, right? Probably a little bit bigger. I'm a kid, right? And I started tinkering with bikes a little bit. And right away, I just took this wrench like this, tightened it down, clamped it on the chain ring or sprocket, and it was just steel at that time. You know, it was a Huffy, right? And bent it, did a pretty good job getting it straight, put the chain on, and boom, I had, what, was pretty much a BMX bike. At the time that I did that, I didn't even know the sport of BMX existed. Like, I didn't even know it was a thing. And so I had this monoshock bike. I still had my Schwinn Stingray. And I saw a magazine at one of my friend's house, and it said bicycle motocross action, and it had these BMXers on the cover. And I'm like, what is this? I remember that day so specifically. I could remember sitting on the couch, or you remember what the living room looked like, and I just was like, saw that magazine, and I was just blown away. I started paging through it, and I'm like, wait, this is a sport? One of the reasons in this video I have this build behind me is because I did this build to kind of represent that time, 1979. I did not have a bike as sweet as this. We didn't have the money to have a bike like this. If I could have afforded it, this would have been what I built, right? Or something very similar. Would have been a Torker or a Mongoose or something like that. Yeah, that was it. I mean, that was really it. Like, that time in my life till to this day, 57 years old, and all the time between that, I have been like BMX and then later mountain biking and just bicycles in general have been like kind of, I hate to say it, like number one in my life. It is my number one passion. Even though I write software, I work as a software engineer or whatever, I love doing that stuff too. But like my mind, my feel, like everything is bikes, right? Even when I'm at work, talking with other people, and there's a few other people that mountain bike at my work, but it's almost always they're asking me about bikes and stuff. Of course, they know I have a YouTube channel. They know a lot. I keep holding this wrench, flinging it around, right? So that was it, right? So I'm not going to go through like the whole thing, or this video will be an hour long, right? But and it's probably going to be a pretty long video, and I don't know who's going to watch the whole thing from beginning to end, but we'll see. But the 80s came. We moved out of Minneapolis to the suburbs. We still didn't have much money, but my parents were wanting to try to give us a better life and things like that. And sure enough, in the suburbs, kids had like the sweetest bikes, stuff more like this, right? And I had this crappy monoshock Huffy thing and a Schwinn Stingray or whatever. And a friend of mine sees this frame at a bike shop. It was a CYC Stormer, and he tells me about it. It was like $75 or $79 for the frame. And I had a paper out at the time. So I saved up my money. I went up there, put money down on the frame and paid it off, and got that frame and brought it home and tried to put other parts on it from my other bikes, but they didn't fit and whatever. But over time, I figured it out, and I got that bike built up to like a real BMX bike, right? And I remember that Huffy monoshock had fake Mongoose Moto Mags on it. So they were heavy. Coaster brake, of course. But I remember when I had that CYC Stormer built up, my first wheels, I took the wheels off the Huffy and had it. So it was like, and by 1980, I was hodgepodging a bike together that was already outdated, like, because everybody else was already moving on to like chromoly frames, aluminum wheels, things like that. But I didn't have the money. I was just learning about the sport. It didn't matter to me. I just wanted a bike to ride, right? So that was kind of the whole beginning. And then, of course, as I got older, I got a job. I worked at McDonald's. I was able to afford a nicer bike. I got a GT race bike and a Redline RL20 freestyle bike and so on. And then I got into mountain biking, and my first mountain bike, I was going to tech school. And while I was in school, I got a Cannondale mountain bike. I want to say it was 87, maybe 88. And that was like my transportation, but I'd also go thrashing around in the woods and stuff. But I also treated it like a BMX bike. I was jumping off loading docks and jumping and stuff, and it didn't hold up. The crank's bent, the fork's bent. I was trying to upgrade parts to be stronger, and mountain bikes weren't strong back then. There was no suspension, right? No front or rear. But, that was kind of my beginning, getting into mountain biking, but I was still super passionate about BMX. And I started racing mountain bikes in the mid-90s and did that, but I was also racing BMX and running Twin City BMX and all that. So I've been obsessed with bikes like the whole time. I'd say the time I was probably less dabbling into bikes was in the 2000s, because that's really when my software career kicked off, was late 90s into 2000, and I just was really focused on the software thing. But I was still riding my bike. I was still mountain biking. I was still dabbling with my BMX bike. I just wasn't doing it as much as I did in the 90s. And then throughout the 2000s, I got more and more involved in the advocacy side through our local advocacy group, Minnesota Off-Road Cyclists, and started traveling and going to mountain bike places and Fruita, Colorado, and went to Whistler, and this was all in the 2000s. And I rode a single-speed, fully rigid bike. Everybody else was starting to get into suspension and stuff, but I just was all about the single-speed, fully rigid bike, and it didn't matter. I mean, I rode BMX, so like riding a bigger wheeled BMX bike basically in Whistler seemed perfect to me. Like, it didn't matter, and I was still riding all the gnarly stuff, right? So yeah, and then we get into the 2010s. There was a 4-year stretch I worked for Quality Bicycle Products. I was doing software for them, but and then got into the 2010s and so on, and just got more and more into mountain biking. I've always dabbled with BMX, but a bit more mountain biking and more serious about mountain biking. And I had a Surly cross check when I was at QBP, and I had that for a long time, and that was my commuter, and I'd go miles on that thing, so pretty much that's it. Like, work, ride bikes. Pretty much been my life ever since, right? So, and I never had kids. So, you get into around when I had my knee replacement. So late 2019, I had a total left knee replacement. And of course, if you do the math, I had already been sober for a few years. I went through a gnarly divorce. I was married for like a 6-ish year period in there, and then a divorce that just kind of devastated me for a few years. But my bike was my sanity, right? And I got, in 2019, I got my left knee replacement. Then I was already doing videos on YouTube, but I wasn't I was just messing around, not taking it that seriously. But I had a Specialized fuse, did some videos with that. I had some other bikes, did some videos, and then I did my knee replacement. I thought, I'm going to talk about, I was, what am I, 57 now? That was 5, so I was 52 at the time, just early 50s. And I'm like, I'm going to do a YouTube channel on recovery of my knee replacement, being an older rider. How do you get through this and continue riding bikes, continue doing your love and things like that. That was my initial intent with my YouTube channel. No plans on doing bike reviews or trail reviews and all these rides and things like that. I mean, I knew I wanted to do some POV footage rides and things like that. And there was a channel, he's still doing it, BKXC, I think it is, Brian is his name. He still does his channel. I remember seeing his channel, kind of the first one where he's doing a lot of POV footage and all these ridings, and I'm like, I should start doing that, right? But then there was now we're into the pandemic, and so on. I've been doing my channel for a while, talking about my knee, but then I watch another YouTube channel called Smarter Every Day, and there's a guy named Destin, and he did this video on don't lose your voice, because I had all these okay, I gotta figure out the YouTube algorithm, I gotta figure out how to do really good filming and things and make sure I have the perfect backdrop, and I gotta get all into the fancy editing and right. Then I saw that video and I'm like, okay, his whole point was don't lose your voice, be your authentic self. Do what you want to do your passion. Don't fall into the shorts, the TikToks, the little bits of things. It's I go on TikTok and it's just young girls in skimpy outfits dancing around, right? I don't know, sure, there's bike clips and BMX clips, and thankfully I've watched enough of those where my algorithm is mostly going to be biking and Red Bull stuff and things, but every once in a while you get the teen dancing on there in their bikini or whatever, and you're just like, okay, whatever. So anyway, when I was seeing this don't lose your voice thing, I'm like, yeah, I want to do me. I want to do what I want to do. I want to do the riding that I want to do. I want to talk about the bikes that I want to talk about. And I realized, well, one of my passions is, bike skills. I'm pretty good at teaching bike skills and explaining it and things like that. But I also know mostly about mechanics, but I've miserably failed at some things. Most recently, changing out the bearings on the Canyon Spectral 125 frame bearings, which I didn't even need to do. I just wanted to do it to learn how to do it, and man, did I miserably fail. But that's life, right? I failed at it. And then I was trying to rebuild a fork, failed. Ended up just sending my bike into my fork into the bike shop. So, but everything else I'm really good at. I can handle dropper posts, I can handle derailleurs and shifters and cranksets and whatever. By the way, speaking of cranksets, I'm going way off topic. Where is it? Somewhere over here. Oh, I saw this. Thankfully, riding season hasn't started. I saw this on my workbench sitting over there, and I was looking at it, and I'm like, and then I was like, oh, crap, I forgot to put the... What is this? All this does is it goes in between the bottom bracket over the spindle, and it's got little kind of O-rings on each side. It just keeps the bearings clean from the inside, so all the gunk gets on here. It's not, I mean, I could ride just fine without it, so it's not a critical piece, but it does keep everything clean. So I was like, glad I didn't start riding, because you could really, your bottom bracket won't last very long if you're getting all the grime in there through any hole or thing around the bottom bracket. I'm sure there is some where the brake cables go through or whatever. But so now I got to take the cranks out and put this in, which won't be a big deal. But, not perfect, right? but it was kind of funny. A little side story there for you. But, you know, I kind of just do what I enjoy doing. And, you know, there's some things I'm really passionate about, like this build here. Like this was such a fun project, and I did it quicker than I expected because I got the wheels and I didn't know what I was going to do with them, but I'm like, God, Mongoose Moto Mags, repos, they're going to only make these for so long. I better just grab a pair when I can, right? And, you know, no kids. I'm a software engineer, right? I've kind of got a little bit bit of, what do you call it, disposable income, expendable income, whatever. So I just snatched the wheels. And then, you know, I'm like, well, now what am I going to do with them? And I just started looking around. I found out Torker was doing repop of their frames, but with modern geometry. And then it was like, bing, oh, that's what I'm going to do. So I ordered the frame and fork. Then I was like, okay, now I got to find all the right parts, right? Like, it was so fun doing this. And I was so surprised that I was able to find, like, these bars, like gold aluminum V-bars in a modern size. Shocker. Of course, they're super rubbery and flexy, so I'm not going to ride seriously with those. That's why I got the chrome moly ones hanging up there. But, you know, the fluted seat post in, I think this is 27.2. Like, they make them. These pedals, MKS, caged pedals from like the late 70s. Still make them? What? Anyway, now I'm going on. But, like, I really loved building this and just kind of, it was my way to honor that time of my life when I discovered BMX. That's what this is, right? So, yeah, that's what I do on my channel. You know, it's basically, it's called Shad Life, right? Which, you know, I think, you know, sometimes I'm like, should I change the name of my channel? Because people probably see Shad Life and they're like, what the hell is that? If you go Google Shad Life and then put in the do this for me. Google Shad Life and then post in the comments how many fishing sites you see. That's all I'm going to say. Just put it in the comments. Tell me what you found. That's a funny one. So, all right. But anyway, like I, you know, but then every time I think about, like, should I change the name that's more bike specific, and then people will see it and be more attracted, and then I'll get more subscribers and blah, 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 blah. Boom. Don't lose your voice. Boom. That's not Shad Life, right? So when I think about the name of my channel, it's Shad's Life, my life. Bikes are my life right now. If this channel keeps going and I get into something else, that'll be into my channel, right? It's one thing I don't put on my channel, and it's mostly because YouTube just crushes you if you do, is this stuff. Right? Like, just don't even talk about it on my channel. But if you look closely in that corner, you'll know that there's another little passion of mine that's, you know, I was in the military, you know, that's just the way it is. But yeah, I mean, I'm kind of just talking as, you know, thinking as I talk, but I wanted to do this video, and I know that it's probably going to have, you know, a small slice of viewers that actually watch the whole thing and care about what I'm saying. And there'll be a lot of people that are like, I want to go watch some dude ripping downhill and busting some big air. Well, I don't blame you, because earlier today I was watching Semina, is that his name? Just released a video. That guy, so rad. I think he rides a Trek. He's doing like a huge jump, foot plant, 180, landing in 180, and it's not like doing it off of something this big. He's doing this off a big, like, cannon type jump and then a landing, foot plant, 180, lands backwards, and then half cabs out and then goes around a berm or whatever. Like, if that's why you're off watching other channels and not watching me babble in this channel, I get it. I totally get it, right? Makes total sense, because when I'm going around YouTube, here's what I do when I'm surfing around YouTube. Depending on what my mindset is at the time and how much time I have, right? I look at the time slots on the videos. It's like, well, if it's, more than 15 minutes or 20 minutes, 20 is kind of like where I usually have a cutoff unless I have time or it's a subject I'm way into. And Smarter Every Day, Destin, he's got much longer videos, sometimes over 30 minutes or more, but they're super cool and scientific and neat experimental stuff. So I watch those all the way through, right? But yeah, for the most part, it's like I look at that time and then I'm like, okay, I don't have time for this, or I'm not interested, I'm not going to be engaged. So I do tend to go for the 10 to 15 minute long videos. And so that's why if you go on YouTube and you see what most YouTubers do, they cater to the algorithm, right? Is they try to keep their videos condensed. Go watch like GMBN and it's like, man, you rarely see videos that they're usually within 10 minutes. I've seen a few go 15 minutes. That's rare. GMBN Tech, those will go a little longer, but that's just the way it is. And, people have different attention spans and things like that. But me, like this particular video here, I just wanted to talk about this and I knew it was going to be a longer video. I also know it's probably not going to get huge numbers, right? But I do try my hardest. I tend to I don't know why. I tend to take longer. I don't have the editing prowess to get all this large amounts of information into this compressed time thing. So I do tend to have a little bit longer videos when I want to get detailed about something. But for the most part, I do try, if it's like just a video about the manual trainer or something else, or the handlebar thing I talked about a few days ago, I try to keep them within around 15 minutes or less, right? So yeah, but yeah, it's something I like doing, and I like doing it just naturally in the way that I like to do it. And I'm over 5K subscribers, which isn't like a massive number. I look at other biking channels and they're 10K, they're 20K, they're 100K, some are, Sam Pilgrim, he's in a few million now, right? So it's like, I'm not competing with that. I watch every single Sam Pilgrim video that comes out for a reason. They're like really good and they're fun to watch, and he's right. Like, I love watching Sam Pilgrim, right? So I get it. I fully understand. But that doesn't change how I want to do things, right? It's just the way it is, right? So that's pretty much it. I've been doing this a long time. And, when I kind of was getting into my channel, I'm like, I even said that in my intro a few times, but I stopped saying it. But it's like, I have a lot of information up here, lots of it. You hear me talk a lot about geometry and kind of this modern trend they're trying to push us into. And I'm like, no, bring it back a little bit. We evolved the bike to a good sweet spot. We don't need to keep evolving it more like crazy geometry, right? So now it's tweaks, it's technology, it's things like that, right, that need to be worked on. But geometry is in a really good place right now. Like this bike, I'm super stoked on it. So, and same with BMX. Like the geometry's been decided in BMX since like the late 90s. I'd say probably the last 10 years. Street bikes, like now riders aren't using brakes on their street bikes, and the rear ends have gotten a lot shorter, and the top tubes have gotten a little longer, and the bikes are a lot more like super agile and made for spinning and really technical tricks, which makes sense. But I mean, in a nutshell, it's like small, little tiny tweaks, not huge changes, not massively long top tubes with ridiculously slack head angles, right? Like, okay, enough on that. But yeah, I have a lot of knowledge on bikes. Like, I probably should be working in the bike industry, but I'll tell you, being a software engineer, I make way more money than I would ever make working in the bike industry. So I don't even bother. Like, I just don't bother. Like, because it's like, yeah, would it be my passion? Would I really like doing it? Yeah, but I'm not going to get paid like probably even half of what I get paid doing software. So I just, like, why? Why would I do that? Like, maybe when I get older, but maybe as I get older, people are going to be like, oh, he's just a washed up old dude. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Right? So there you have it. And yeah, if you're still here, shockingly still here, I really do appreciate your support for my channel. And definitely if you watch this whole video and you haven't hit that subscribe button, you better be hitting that freaking subscribe button, because nobody watches a whole video like this if you're not into what I'm talking about. Peace.